Hello, everyone. Welcome our panel participants and also everyone who's joining us on live streams. So we are doing today a panel on hardware supply chains. And before starting, I just want to say that just a few words. So this panel discussion is conducted in the framework of Armenia Startup Academy Traction Program. The program is implemented by Catalyst Foundation and supported by the European Union's EU for Business Technology Development for Armenia, Armenia project implemented by GIZ. And Viva-MTS joins the initiative as a corporate partner and supporter. I also want to mention to our viewers that you can write your questions in live streams. There are sections for chat. You can ask your questions, and we'll try to answer them all in the end of the discussion. So I want the participants to introduce themselves. Maybe we can go one by one. So my name is I'll do it in the end. So Sargis, let's start from you. Sargis, you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Tigran. I'm Sargis, the CEO and co-founder at Embry. We are building a smart insole that tracks body weight without the scale, helps people manage the weight. So we are Armenia-based startup. Started 3 years ago. Passed all the hard part with the prototyping. Now on the phase of starting mass manufacturing. Just starting to set up the supply chain. Basically, that's for today's topic.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rafayel?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for hosting me here. I'm Rafayel Ghasabyan, and I'm representing RAFA Solutions. We are a systems integrator company. We did different projects for basically different industries, mostly embedded projects, all related to some hardware integration. And then just recently, we're starting to spin off another company, which is in machinery domain. And it's still under stealth mode, but it's a product company. So we are, it's first time we're basically becoming like a startup. So we're designing something so that later to enter to the market. It's a very niche market, and hopefully in near future, you will start hearing about that. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Rafayel. Mihran Vardanyan, can you start?
Hi, guys. Thank you for organizing this event. I think it's very useful for the Armenian startup community to have this bright examples how to do different things in startup community. I've been working in San Francisco for the past 5 years as in different roles, mainly in the business roles, and right now I'm the CTO of robotics company that makes educational robots for kids and all content around it. And the company is learnwithmochi.com, and I'm happy to share my experience with you.
Thanks, Mihran. Papazian.
Yeah, thanks guys for the opportunity. So my name is Mihran. I'm the founder of Brushette. So we are right now focused on manufacturing electric toothbrushes. And before that, I also had my own factory in China where I lived for a while, and I also worked in doing trading, a lot of import exports from China. So I'm happy to exchange in this with this panel.
Great, thanks. Ashot, Mashuryan.
Hi everybody, thank you for hosting me. I think this is a very good panel. I will be happy to share my experience with China. I'm a CEO of HELTUN. We are a hardware company. We're developing and producing. By the way, we're doing assembling of all our products in Armenia. Sure, we do a production in China of components, but the final assembling is done in Armenia. And we are focused in the IoT sector. We are producing smart home devices for home automation. And I have about 5 years experience in working with China and in manufacturing. Now we are scaling our production and selling our products to about more than 20 countries in Europe, all over the world actually.
Great, thanks. So let me say a few words also about my experience, and then we'll jump into the questions. So I'm Tigran Shahverdyan, CTO of Robomart. We are building a service for hailing a mobile store to you when you need it. And we think this is going to revolutionize how people are doing shopping, because this is a completely new way of how you can get your groceries. And we are right now focused on launching. So we are also going into this through these questions of like what is like few prototypes, what is like a small batch, and then how we prepare for the next stage of the production. I also have experience with my previous company RoboCV, where we transitioned from this stage from prototype, and we were building autonomous vehicles for warehouses. The company is still active, and they are, I would say, in the batch production mode right now. And I've seen that the transition from prototype to batch production. So okay, I'll stop there introductions, and let's get into the discussion. We have a lot of interesting questions today, so let's try to keep it to the point so we can answer all these, discuss all these topics, and also get to the questions from the viewers. I want to start, as we are discussing topic of supply chain, so I want to start with the definition. So how will you define supply chain? Sargis, maybe you can answer, and then if others have anything to add, we'll do that.
Actually, I have the least experience. I joined today to learn from these experienced guys. But yeah, I'll try my best. So for me, supply chain is totally anything related to converting raw materials and components into product and delivering it to the end user. I would define that way. You are muted.
Yes. Anybody wants to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add. I mean, besides which I believe is the right is the right approach. I mean, is the right definition from a dictionary perspective. From my perspective, I would say that it's depending on the products that you're trying to build. There is always a core component to it. And it's really about how you're going to be working, where are you going to be placing your effort into the main factory or main supplier, and having all these other guys that are like sub-components or other provider that are going to be pivoting around. So it's really that organization of thing, and it can go from a very simple thing, which is a one piece, one molded product. I don't know, have like bag of Kleenex. It could be like that you're doing this somewhere and then this somewhere else, and then where are you assembling it, in this factory or in this factory? So it's really like every time, obviously in this case will probably be the same, but when you're going into more complex and high tech and hardware, it's a lot of picturing, having a diagram of who you're going to be talking to, how you're going to be managing those moving parts, and coming up to a puzzle that makes you comfortable when you're transacting.
Can I add something?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, to add to what guys defined, which I very much agree with both like definitions and what is supply chain. I would actually add also, except talking about the subcomponents and basically the logistics, how to put all this together. The supply chain also includes all the challenges of communication with the different companies, with all the vendors. So the supply chain is not only I would say the transition of the product from one place to another, and at the end assembly of those, and defining and understanding when and how to optimize that process, but also the communication between those entities, which is, I think, one of the most challenging parts. It's not only always the difficult part to understand what is your product consist of and where to buy those, rather to negotiate, to understand the best way of getting it and like tendering if that's required and so on. So just adding to the definition, the communication between those companies.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah, I would say from the startup point of view, doing whatever is needed to get your product on the market and finding the market fit is the entire the supply chain. So from raw materials to components to final product, and it includes everything like marketing, forecasting.
Okay, great. Well, I just suggest we move on. I think we defined it well. So coming to the next question is, we have different stages of production, right? We can start from prototyping, then go into batch production, then mass production. So what are the differences of supply chains for these different sizes? How you can define the different production scales, and specifically, when would a company need to set up a supply chain for small size, like batch production? So, Rafael, let's start from you, and then see if anybody can add.
I think the supply chain, what is it at the end? I think like it's there even if you manufacture just one piece of something, you have a supply chain. It may be something very simple, but you still need to buy something to put together and then to deliver it to the customer. So that's what is the supply chain. But the other point is that depending on the scale of the production of the batch, if you are doing that for 100 pieces, 1,000 or 1 million, the challenges and the process is being changed, which is what is the supply chain further on. So to answer to your question, if like just short answer, when do we need the supply chain? We need the supply chain from the first day. Just from that perspective, it can be very much simple. Just like, I'm going to buy something from like in Armenian way, we can say like from vernissage or from, I don't know, some shop somewhere, and then put together and see, okay, it works. But then when you have not only the scale of the quantity, but also from the perspective of the quality of the product or the production, like you cannot organize the same thing when you have like 1,000 pieces. If you need to do that with 1,000 pieces. So then it changed, and then supply chain dictates different rules and regulations to make sure that the product quality is maintained, and then you're able to do that on time.
Okay, I just want to put maybe some numbers behind all these like different terms, right? Can somebody define the different scales of production, maybe the numbers approximately, so our viewers can understand what they're talking about? Sargis,
It
maybe.
really depends. It really depends on the price point of the product that you're selling. If you're selling products that are $1 a piece, then probably past 1 million pieces, then you'll probably scale up. If you're selling products that are worth $500 a piece, then if you're already doing 1,000, then it's really a matter of business volume, I think. What do you represent with the suppliers and whatnot? But I mean, to Rafayel's point, it's more. It really starts from the get-go. So even when you're prototyping, you technically are bringing the products from a place to another, assembling it, doing some tweaking, and then delivering it. So you really have a supply chain from the. If you're in the business, I would say that there is an important element here, is that if you're in the business of, because we're talking about hardware and we're talking about possibly businesses that are buying different components from different places, assembling them either in their shop or a third-part factory who will do the assembly. There is the important element is the ERP, is that you'll need to set something up that is
Yeah, no, sorry, I want to interrupt there. We will come to that question about tools.
Okay, sorry.
If you want to hold on, yeah. So again, I just.
May I add something to the?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to also, if we can talk about when we should start specifically setting up supply chain for the batch production and mass production. Is there any idea?
So I would define it in this way. Depending on your product, if you the production can be considered batch production. If you can, so at the beginning you have some parts which are manufactured and some parts you do hand assembly and you do some 3D printing and so on. As long as you can afford your team to manufacture by hand the parts you have hand work, the unit number you can afford to do, that could be considered manufacturing, batch manufacturing. Afterwards, you need to, as Rafayel mentioned, the communication is important. You need to design a documentation to describe the factory, to automate the parts you are doing handmade. Then you are going to the mass scale.
Can I try to answer your question from the quantity perspective, defining the level? So there, like in general, as guys told, like it's very much dependent on the market. Like for example, if you're manufacturing something for consumer market or you're manufacturing something for the industrial market, like there are markets like the one that we are now entering with our company. Its worldwide market size is around 20,000 pieces per year being manufactured worldwide, and that's not even that cannot be considered as mass production. So the maximum scale for me is never going to reach the mass production with the standard terminology, because in the consumer market, it's most of the time the batch is several hundreds. Then the other level is called engineering version. That's when you do quite bigger quantity, which is thousands of pieces, and you may still not deliver that to the customer. That you're doing to make sure to prove the design for the mass production. And then only the mass production starts, which is more than several tens of thousands or 100,000, and then reaching to millions of pieces. That's kind of the definition for the size of for the quantity of the production. And of course, the supply chain is being changed. Not the supply chain, but the methodology. How are you going to source your components, and how are you going to make sure that those components suffice to the quantity and quality of the product? That's being changed from one level to another.
Okay. Yeah, great.
I totally agree with you guys. Yeah, sorry, Tigran.
Yeah, sure, go on.
just a small additional point. I think it's also important by quality of a product. So when you go into a prototyping or you samples production, you don't pay big attention to the quality. But when you go into mass production, doesn't matter what is the quantity of the production. The quality already is important. So probably also a good definition will be not only the quantity, also the outcome from this production. What is the quality of the product? So if you go to a small market, but with full end product with high quality, already can be defined as a mass production. But you can, as Rafayel said, you can probably produce even 10,000 units for internal check-in, for internal use, and it still will be samples, and it's not a mass production.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Let's move on then. We have a lot of other questions. So I wanted to ask this question to Ashot and Sargis, and if somebody wants to add. Shahverdyan set up a fully equipped lab for batch production in the beginning. And if not, what are the alternatives when you have a limited budget and investments? Ashot, maybe you can start.
From my experience, I understand that if you are not going to large quantity production in China, let's say 100K units or even more, probably the best way is to set up their own assembling line, at least assembling line. So do something in-house, just to be able to check the quality and by your own engineer to change some process of assembling and production. And I also understand that probably this way even is more cheaper than just going to China and try to organize the small batch production in China. So this is actually what we did in Armenia, and we started from manufacturing of all components in different factories in China. So we don't use only one supply chain. We have many different factories, many different partners, and we producing our components there and then deliver it to Armenia and do final assembling here in Armenia. And during this assembling process in Armenia, we understand that we need to do some change in the product to make it better quality, better assembling, faster assembling, etc. So I think that probably for the beginning, when we are not going to a big batch, probably the best way is to do assembling in-house instead of going to some big company and put a full assembling line and full assembly process in one partner.
Okay. Yeah. Other opinion?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Ashot. We came to the same idea with the same experience. We tried to delegate some parts, but then at the end of the day, for batch production, we started doing assembly ourselves. What I wanted to add is that when you just start, when you have limited budget, the assembly line, setting up assembly line here in Armenia is not that cheap at the beginning. So you don't have to start right away. So the alternatives, I wanted to talk about alternatives and wanted to mention that we have a really great and supportive community, starting from the people in the panel today to other people. If you have challenges doing anything related with hardware in Armenia, please PM me. If you don't know people who can help, I know a lot of people who can help. We had cases when people had their own laser cut or 3D printer, and just we posted in Facebook that we need at the middle of the night, they would come open their lab and do work for you. This is just hardware community in Armenia. These people are not, maybe they're a little bit hidden, but there are these people who are very supportive and they have their own labs. so I wanted to emphasize that for the beginners. And then when you have some success and you have raised some money, you can definitely, and you should, if you have engineering team in Armenia, you should set up a lab where you can do batch production of your product.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is one of the probably main points of the discussion for our viewers. Okay, let's move on to our next question. So what's the difference between prototyping and manufacturing from the supply chain perspective? Sargis, maybe you can continue.
Yeah, the main difference I would say when you prototype, you don't think that much about the scale. You just go buy something in the store, maybe in Radio Lubitsa here in Yerevan, or you order in Amazon or somewhere else. You just want to be fast. You may borrow some parts from friends, but when you want, it completely changes when you want to replicate a product. When you build one prototype, it's easy. When you want to build again 10 prototypes, but 10 of them which are identical, then you got a problem. So my advice would be, whenever you find something, just ask the supplier. We have done these mistakes. Just asking the supplier whether they have supply and what are the lead times will save you a lot of time and help with decision making. And so talk to don't be shy and don't be afraid to ask suppliers a lot of questions, even if you are not sure whether you are going to use that part at the end of the day or not.
Okay. Mihran Vardanyan, you want to add something to this question?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sargis. During prototyping, you only focus on the engineering part. You don't think about sales, marketing that much. And of course, I think one of these points that you need to try to communicate to the suppliers and make sure that they have all the parts that you need. I've seen a lot of startups who spend like years, like 3 years developing a product, and then at the end, supplier like discontinues a chip, and then they cannot even ship the first batch. So I would suggest for the prototyping stage, try to use the easiest, the most common parts. Try to prototype on Raspberry Pi, Arduino, everything that's very easy to find, and get the product ready for the user testing.
Okay. Ashot?
Maybe if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, Mihran.
Sorry, Ashot. I just wanted to weigh in this question because I have a very an experience on my own in 2013 when we wanted to set up a factory. We did, but it took a while. We were from a lab stage for like 3-4 months, and we're not talking about electronic product. It was a chemical breathalyzer, alcohol breathalyzer. So that there was some chemical stuff involved, and really we knew how to make 1 or 2 or 10 pieces in the lab until we figured out how to scale that and to make millions of pieces. It took us 3 months of nonstop. There was no other factories or no other example that we could get inspired or copy. So and then we bought a bunch of equipments for nothing. And this is, I think, part of if you're getting into a new product that has been very rarely made or not made before, then there will be a huge difference between making milk in your kitchen and making it from an industrial, on an industrial scale. And I face that. So from the entire supply chain on what you're going to keep in-house, what you're going to outsource, etc. There are big impact and big differences.
Okay. Ashot, can you add something to this topic?
Yeah, for me, the biggest difference between prototype and production is also the price. When you're going to produce something in a few units only, you don't care about how much it costs. So probably you will go to a most expensive supplier just to be able to make it as fast as you can, and spend a few $1,000s just to have one or two pieces. But when you go into production, you already need to think about how much it's cost, because you have your product, you have a user price, sales price, and this time when you go into production, you're already looking for a supplier who can provide you good quality product with the cheapest price. But for prototyping, it's not so important. So probably even what we do sometimes, we're doing prototype in 3-4 different factories at the same time, just to be able to be sure that we can get at least from 1 or 2 factories in right time and in right quality, just to be able to check our product. So we spend much more money on prototyping, but when you go into production, it's already important to have a good supply chain with good prices.
Okay, great. So Ashot, what do you think? What are the main challenges in tooling and sourcing from Armenia, and are there any advantages?
Sourcing in where? Sorry.
Sourcing from Armenia.
Oh,
Are there any
unfortunately, I have a
advantages?
very bad experience sourcing Armenia. The problem in Armenia is that if we are talking about hardware products, we almost don't have any serious factories with big experience who can produce a good quality product. If a product quality is important in your business, unfortunately, in Armenia, it's not so easy to find anyone who can produce, let's say, plastic or even plastic. This is very, very simple thing. It's also a problem in Armenia that you don't have choice. So you can't find 10, 20 different factories, negotiate with each of them, and get a best price. In case of China, you have lots of hundreds of different factories. If one of them is not okay for you because of price, you can go to the next one. But in Armenia, even if you find someone who can produce the product in the quality you need, it will be only one supplier, probably two. It's depending on what you are doing. The easiest thing is the printing. So in our products, we have lots of manuals, printings, etc. It's even printing is not so easy to do in Armenia. Because when you are going to a big quantity, let's say 10,000 units or even more, in case of Chinese people, Chinese factories, Chinese suppliers, I can be sure that probably I will get the same quality which I got for 10,000 units. But for Armenia, people doesn't have big experience in scaling and in increasing the quantity of a product. And probably another thing is that most of what is done in Armenia is used in our local market. It's not going to export. And when you're asking for super quality, let's say in our case, we are doing a luxury product, and not everybody are ready to meet these requirements in the beginning. This is my experience.
Okay. Rafayel, can you add something to this question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, I think my recommendation to anyone who wants to enter to the hardware manufacturing, hardware design and like building hardware products from Armenia. I don't call that in Armenia because I think the major importance is that to build the brand in Armenia and to keep the financials, to keep the money in Armenia. But I don't think the best is to use the Armenian mind and resources and people and manforce to manufacture, to do a mass manufacturing. And there are many reasons for that, which is one is the sourcing, like having a landlocked country and being quite in a challenging situation from this perspective of customs clearance, from the perspective of overall, for the big quantity of different subcomponents to bring to Armenia, to assemble everything and then to export those things. I think that's not the best thing to be done in Armenia. It's better to design, to make everything here, but then to leave the sourcing to be done, and like contract manufacturing to be done somewhere else. Maybe not particularly in China, maybe somewhere else, which may have a better option. But like other than batch manufacturing, prototyping and batch manufacturing, I would not go for mass production in Armenia. That's like kind of challenges. Mostly just in one word, that would be the customs and logistics. From the advantages perspective, I think at the moment it is possible to have the batch manufacturing to be done in Armenia, which is also not bad. That's the positive side of for the small quantity, you can still build the whole product and you can do the testing. And I would probably, like your question includes also the tooling and having a lab. I think like the testing lab to have in Armenia is very much obligatory. If you're designing a new product, you need to have a lab near to the designers, near to the engineering. And then you should have all the batch components, like either manufactured locally or brought from contract manufacturer to be tested just next door to the design facility. So that's something to add from my side.
Okay. Ghasabyan, your perspective?
Agree with both of them, with Ashot and Rafa. I would like to add one advantage. If we are talking about disadvantages with plastic, we have vice versa with metal. Let's say with steel, aluminium. If you want to work with metal, so you have some parts. Again, I'm not talking about mass manufacturing, about prototyping and batch manufacturing. Then in Armenia, you can do it really, really cheap. Just you need to find the right people, and there are those people. And if we are talking about, and also others, sometimes you find some parts in Armenia that it's really difficult to find in other places. That's the advantage. And the huge disadvantage is that anything shipped to Armenia, if you want it to be fast, then you need to pay more money, or you need to wait for a couple of weeks to get them in here. And to mitigate that disadvantage, to handle somehow, I would advise to order with a little bit bigger quantities. If you need one part, order 10 of them if those are not that expensive, and also order from 2 or 3 different suppliers or 2 or 3 different versions, because it is going to save you a lot of time and money when you make a decision for the next batch. Because if one part is not working, then you spend a lot of time in logistics to get another version to Armenia. So you should test a lot of components parallelly, order them parallelly, and with a little bit bigger quantities that you need.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, I think Mihran Papazian has a lot of experience, and maybe who else wants to add on this question. What are the differences between sourcing in US and China?
It's funny. I have no experience in sourcing in the US. I think Sargis does, and he, like last time I've seen Sargis literally was in the US in a factory where he was trying to, he was working with, with this insole. I mean, with this chip factory. So I can't say what's in the US. just maybe I can just add up, like circling back on the previous question on sourcing in Armenia. I think it's not. When I relocated here about a year ago, people are like, "Oh, cool! So you moved here, so you're gonna manufacture your toothbrushes in Armenia." I'm like, "No, I moved here, and that's it." It's like, why did you move to Armenia then? Well, to eat khorobads and then to pay, to pay cheaper staff, and that's the truth. Including founders and including the whole team are much more cost effective in Armenia. Now, what can you do out of Armenia? We probably do testing, prototyping, maybe some lab testing, as Rafa was saying. But to actually build a factory requires what we call the entire supply chain next to it. All your raw manufacturers, to your raw material manufacturers, all your shipping companies, everything got to talk to each other. And as Ashot is saying, if there is one or two guys doing plastic injection, there is no way that you pull products out of Armenia like that. So probably so again, no experience in sourcing from the US. I don't know, I'll defer to you, Sargis, if you want to add up on that. I can talk about China, but not the US.
Okay, you talk about China.
Yeah. Sargis, yeah, please go.
Okay, I have no that much experience, but I have tried to source in US and source in China. Literally traveling to Shenzhen, traveling to LA, and trying to set some supply chain there. The difference is that in Shenzhen, everything is closer and really fast. They would deliver. They would take the samples and meet you in the lobby of your hotel to show you samples. And there are this district of electronic parts, and all the factories are closer. You can go their offices, see the factory, where they manufacture, how they're manufacturing. It was like when I was in Shenzhen, I was really thinking to move the team to Shenzhen to be more productive. But then you realize there are a lot of challenges to do that. So we didn't do it. Then we tried to do some manufacturing in LA. Surprisingly, you can find anything in LA, and it is surprising for all those people. So you find a shoe manufacturer in LA, they are surprised that you found a PCB manufacturer in LA. You found a PCB manufacturer in LA, they are surprised that you found a shoe manufacturer in LA. But in US, everything is super expensive, but the quality is high, and people love to meet and build a relationship with you, but then they charge you a lot.
Let me add something, kind of summarizing what Sargis told, because I also had some experience working both with US and China, probably working with the same company in the US. And I think we had a very good experience, I think, Sargis. I mean, because that company owner was also Armenian. So that's changing. I mean, probably working with some other US entity, the attitude and the work ethic and many things may be different. But just to summarize, I think the US supply chain or the contract manufacturing in the United States is more reliable. It costs more than in China. Sometimes it can take longer, and then I think still in the US, although in China everything is nearby and so on, but like many times you may be able to buy something from the US even cheaper than in China, being sure that it works. Because the same component in China, you don't have any guarantee that they have put exactly the original components and so on. So that's kind of advantage of like DigiKey is there, the Mauser and some others like distributors or resellers. And same way we have got the Taobao and some others in the China. But like from the perspective of reliability, and trustfulness, I think the US is winning. From the perspective of cost, China is winning.
Agreed.
Okay.
So the
Thanks.
conclusion is for the prototyping, go to the US, and for mass production, go to China.
Okay. So, from your experience, how would you make big manufacturers to talk to you in the beginning? Rafayel, maybe you can continue.
I think Mihran was adding something. Mihran Vardanyan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I'm in San Francisco, so internet is very, very bad here. Like it's the worst internet you can get. And this morning we woke up to like lots of smoke, so it's like very dark morning. The sky is orange, and the internet is like disconnected every five minutes. I don't know what. But for our mass production, we had to. So we for the prototyping, we used a lot of like US-based companies. But for the prototyping, when you actually have to for the mass production, we had to move our head of engineering to China to sit there and test every single component, because yeah, the reliability is a huge problem, and then they can announce one parameter, like one set of parameters for the components, and then you get it, and it's completely different. So every single time we had to have our head of engineering there changing actually our PCBs on the fly to make sure the component will work.
Okay. Yeah, some interesting perspectives and some differences people think. And of course, it's probably dependent on different cases, on a lot of factors. Okay, so coming back to that question, I was saying, like, how you make big manufacturers to talk to you in the beginning?
Were you asking that to me, Tigran?
Rafayel, yeah, if you can answer, or we can defer to someone.
I had a chance to have an opportunity to talk to a couple big manufacturers when working for a consumer product. It was quite a long time back when we were in the way of putting the supply chain for ARM-Tab, ARM-Phone, and those kind of products. And we had some trials of talking to a couple like vendors, as well as like Allwinner, like TSMC, not TSMC, but like there was one other quite big vendors for the chips, as well as the contract manufacturers. And it's really challenging, because if you go and talk that we are in the stage that we want to start something and our quantities are like even 1,000 is very small quantity for a proper mass production manufacturing facility in China. So they start to have some discussions if you are going to have per year around 500,000. If it's less than 500,000, I think like the only way to get into those companies and have some negotiations and discussions that through the network. So which for sure, I think every Armenian has got a good network through Armenians, as well as just through talking to each other. So I think like the only way to get to those big vendors is through the network and having a good product with a good market validation on the stage of the prototyping. For those two things, like if you have got a good thing that they can believe that you're going to scale, they may talk. And then the second thing, if you are introduced by somebody. And the other ways are, they don't pay much of attention to you. They still talk to you, but like you feel that they're not going to work with you for a real, I mean, they need money. They need huge money to invest, because their processes are also very much expensive compared to those small firms which manufacture like 100 pieces, 1,000 pieces, and so on.
Okay.
So what?
Mihran, Papazian, what's your experience?
Well, yeah, I can speak a little bit on that. I think the question should probably be rephrased. It's not necessarily how you make, how can you talk to big manufacturers? If you talk to big manufacturers, it's assumed that you have big orders. So if you don't, then there is a fit problem. And I think this is the first thing that, you obviously the big guys, they have more guarantee and more assurance, but they're not the right fit, and then you'll be disregarded and ignored, as Rafa is saying. So I think it is really a question of fit depending on the volume that you're doing. You also don't want to move your molds and move your stuff every time that you place a slightly bigger order. So it's very important to find the right, the first 100, 200 people factory, maybe for your first year. I don't know, depending again on your product and what you do. But and you're going to probably be sourcing, tens of them on Alibaba, asking friends, asking the Armenian community, and all that. You're gonna have like 10 factories on your list. You're gonna put them on a map. You're gonna spend 3 full days, like 3 factories a day. You'll be spending 3-4 days visiting all of them. What you got to do is really finding a bond, like a strong relationship, and that starts by pitching your product. We're all entrepreneurs. We've been all doing hundreds of different pitch decks. Well, one of them got to be for your manufacturer. It's a sales process. So you got to sell why you have the best smart shoe in the world. Why is this going to pick up from 1,000 pieces to 1 million pieces after 48 months, etc. So realistic plan and really a sales process. Second, if you yourself are knowledgeable about your product, I'm thinking in the case of Ashot, who is assembling himself in Armenia. He has hands on the product. He's knowledgeable on his product. He's touching it every day. Well, he has a lot of things to teach to those guys. And they are thirsty for knowledge. They're thirsty for gaining something out of you. If it's not direct money and direct orders, it's like filling these bonds. So that would be the second thing. And then third thing is is that cultural thing to maintain a relationship, because the shit is gonna hit the fan. You know that you're gonna have problem and you solve it. So you gotta, or you think that you'll be solving the problem most easily. Those will be my input for sourcing the factory.
Yeah, great, really great insights.
So as a startup, probably you don't want to talk to these big manufacturers in the beginning, because you still need to find your market fit. So you have to, ideally, might be easier to work with smaller contract manufacturer, get your first unit out to the world and get it tested. When you have the market fit and proof of concept, then you can just take the numbers to the big manufacturer and they will happily talk to you.
Okay, great.
Can I add something?
Sure, man.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit small tricks about how to talk to suppliers. I'm not talking about manufacturing your product. I'm talking about when you buy products. So if you want to quote, let's say you use in your prototype some chip and you want to quote big quantities, sometimes they don't reply if you're small. So here, again, as Rafayel mentioned, network plays a huge role. In our case, when we started working with the factory in US, the owner is Armenian. So we are asking him to quote for us, and they are happy to reply immediately, and they are happy to give good prices. This is one trick. When you find someone who is credible for them and they quote instead of you, they talk to them. And another thing that worked for us is going to events and going to shows where they are showcasing their products. They usually have a head of product, head of sales, this kind of people in the show, so you can make a contact with them, relationship. You pitch your product there, and then they start to talk to you immediately. For example, we managed to talk to head of product of Nordic Semiconductors and receive a development board of a next generation of the chip we are using right now. Just attending an event where they were showcasing their next generation chip. So and many other cases with trade shows when we were able to connect with management people of the suppliers.
Sargis, I think it's a great trick that you are suggesting in our experience as well. So we have a local China-based consultant who is constantly ordering like huge batches of components, and when they got the quote, they can see who else is ordering this and combine your quote with the other. So sometimes they even suggest to change a component or a piece to say, okay, we're ordering huge quantity of this piece for another company. It will be very easy to add like your order on top of it as well. I think it's a very good point to mention.
Great. Ashot, you want to add something?
Unfortunately, I have no fortunately, I have no experience working with big suppliers, big manufacturers, because from as Rafayel said and Mihran also, you need to be big to be able to speak with big suppliers.
Okay, sure. So I think we got some really good advices here on this question. So let's move on. Let's start talking about like supply management tools. Like, when do you think should a company start using supply management tools, supply chain management tools, sorry, and what benefits such tools can bring? Rafayel, maybe, I think you have experience with that. Maybe you can.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, we're still not using many of those tools, but we understand, like, when talking about the tools, everything starts probably for everyone, it starts with Excel. So that's many times people are saying like Excel is the best tool. But of course, when you scale, when you have much bigger number of components and not only the components, but also managing the suppliers, that's when you need to have a proper CRM. You need to have CRM not only for the customers, but basically like having a database of all the suppliers and stocking there, having the inventory tools. So the ERP is basically what covers all those components. It can be, I don't want to name the vendors or the company names who are the big players there. But to answer to your question, I think that's something that's really important, and it needs to be settled there for any mass production site. And there are many challenges. Something to add, when jumping from one phase to another, like, why should we have that all the management of the supply chain or management of the components? So many times, at least in my experience, what happens when you do have the proven design, you made the prototype, and even later on you have manufactured 20 pieces of that product, and it was very well manufactured, like maybe 19 from those 20 were fully functional, as well as the parametric test was fine, which means like, seems like a very good yield. I don't know if our audience is aware about the term called yield. Yield is basically in Armenia, it will be the kind of OGG, like what's the percentage of the non-failed components compared to the total? A very simple way to describe what could be the yield. But then when you jump from 20 pieces to thousands, with the same factory, with the same components, everything will keep the same. And then you discover that somehow like 20% or maybe even 30% of your components or of your final products are failing. So that's when you need to think about proper tools and testing mechanisms and maybe even changing the design. So sometimes changing from one version to another, like batch to engineering version to the mass production version, you're requiring to change your suppliers, you change the design, you change the components. And the reason behind is that the components are not fitted for the, like most of, in the hardware world, we get the EMI, EMC, like electromagnetic immunity tests, and like how the magnetic field is impacting our device, as well as our device is impacting the electromagnetic other devices. So those things you need to test, and then you discover that there are two components which should not be that close to each other. Or one component fails when you manufacture more than 1,000 pieces. So those are the things that you need to consider when choosing, like that's when you need to have a proper ERP system. That's like a must. Okay, I will leave others to add some other stuff probably.
Okay. Mihran, Papazian, maybe you have.
Well, on the tools, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think talking about CRM, I think everyone, you know, whether it's your, you know, whether you're using Trello, you are using your email marketing software, whatever you're using but on the supply side, if you're buying components per se, or like shipping them from place to another, working with different suppliers and working with these components, I would strongly suggest to put very, very early on a small ERP, not spending too much money, something that can get you going for the first year or two, and something that can, you know, that you can onboard, you know, in a matter of, you know, between 10 days to 2 weeks, so that you control.
Can you name one of such like small size? What ERP would you recommend?
I've implemented the King DA, which is a full Chinese ERP. So that's the one I've implemented at the factory. I would not necessarily recommend this one, but I know there are a bunch of open source one. But to be able to control all your, you know, your different warehouses, your different suppliers, your different incoming material, semi-finished product, where are the orders, like all that you will need. Like you can't just use Excel. Now, in our case, speaking of supply chain, we're fine enough. We don't have an ERP when we're selling the toothbrushes at the factory, yes, but not when we're selling the toothbrushes. But what is important to me is to have a view on the WMS, on the warehouse management system, and then that we know that how much product we have in each warehouse, what are the amount of returns, the amount of defects, the amount of all that. Those are the tools that we'll be consulting on a daily basis. But if from the manufacturing side, definitely I'll implement a small size ERP to get the ball rolling. Otherwise, I'll spend more time reconciliating the Excel than being able to do. And there is no like the magical tool that you want does not exist. So if you keep that out of your mind and you start with a tool that does 80% of the job, it's already good enough. Then you'll have time to scale and to make your own. Everyone wants a sur-mesure ERP that does exactly this when you click this button. So you need to get this out of the way very early stage. I would say that's my recommendation.
If there are some software guys, start building a proper ERP.
Yeah, I think I've seen some open source projects too, which have like also like paid component, but we can maybe discuss it later. So okay, and anybody else has experience you want to share with us, or we should move forward? Let's talk about quality then. So we touched a bit this topic previously, but obviously one of the components in ensuring the quality is the incoming quality control of the components. So what is it and what is its role in the hardware supply chain? Rafayel, can you start on this?
Yes, sure. Yeah, just for the audience to define what is this incoming quality control. So basically, as anything you buy, you are not 100% sure that what you have got is actually functioning the way it is specified in the datasheet or in the documentation. So many times, especially if you buy huge quantities, you are in a risk that that component is probably failing, either functional or parametric. So it may still function, but may not have the, let's say if it is an amplifier. So the gain is not exactly the number that you have assumed it should be in the datasheet. So it's very much important to do an IQC, which is like to test all the components in advance before you assemble the final product. And like many times, probably everyone has gone through that. When you are in the prototyping stage, the cost of the manufacturing, you don't pay much of the attention to that. So you're skipping those stages. You assemble something. If something is not working, you just debug. You find out what's the issue. You replace that, and that's all fine. But when you start to do the real manufacturing, either mass production or even batch, you need to pay attention to make sure that the components are functional and are satisfying to your needs. Otherwise, the cost of change is multiple times, several tens of times more when you assemble all the batch and then you discover that there was one component that was supplied with a very bad quality, with having a yield of maybe like 20% of functionality. So that's kind of the importance of IQC. And I think like that, to come to the contract manufacturers, and when deciding which contract manufacturer to work with, it plays a huge role what is the lab that they have, what are the internal processes, and how you can force them to have the proper testing. So as for what we do, we define the test procedures and test cases on behalf of our contract manufacturers, and it's not only for the I2C as well as for the final product. And I think Mihran was mentioning that their head of technical department, like somebody goes to China for the final testing of the product. So we do also similar kind of stuff. At least one or two engineers with every batch, they're flying to China. They stay there for 2 weeks, for even a month, depending on the batch size, to conduct all the final testing. And we build the ATE ourselves. So ATE is the automated test equipment. So it may be semi-automated or it may be manual test equipment, but we carry that with us. We do all the testing in the factory side to make sure that the quality of the product suffices our needs. And if something is not working the way that we expect, then we are there, that we just give them back. They do like replacement of the components or whatever. And just back to what Ashot was talking about, like diversifying the suppliers and making sure that you don't work with a single company, there is still kind of a trade-off. So if you put the responsibility of the sourcing to the contract manufacturer, rather than you source the components and you provide him with the components, then you need to make sure that they have a proper I2C. Otherwise, in my case, I'm working with the same company, both for the supply of the sourcing of the components as well as the final assembly. So what I'm saying, like, I don't care from where are you buying, how are you doing the I2C, because the final product needs to be delivered with this thing. Otherwise, if you buy from somewhere, you bring it there, then he's telling, it was not working because you have sourced some components which have got a bad quality. So having a single responsibility center, which is like that kind of the company that does the sourcing as well as the manufacturing, has got its own advantage. Although they own more information, they can somehow do something wrong for you, which then you need to have also to be legally protected and so on. I will stop here. I talk quite a lot for this. Okay, that's it. Go ahead, guys.
Rafayel, I think you covered pretty much everything. I just want to add that for our case, we start thinking about testing pretty early on in the beginning and on the design. During the design process, we think how the testing rigs will look like, at what are the stages. I think for the startups who plan to manufacture, it's quite important to think about this testing rigs and plan on developing them as well, because not all the contract manufacturers will do it for you.
Okay, great.
I would like to add something,
Sure,
Tigran. Because when we started, I spent a lot of time on checking of every component we use in our product, and we have probably more than 72 different components. When I got a big batch and start with something, I understand that actually, even if I approve a quality of a product or a supplier, I understand that some components is not okay, and it's impossible actually to do a full testing of a product in China. That's why we always calculate about 20% fail rate in the beginning of a product. And each time when you increase the batch, let's say when you come from 100 units to 1,000 units, you have one problem in one component. When you change from 1,000 to 5,000 units, you have a problem in another component. So always you need to check the process and understand where you have a biggest problem with your components, instead of spending time on and money on checking in the first days. So just start the production, do 100 units, understand where is your problem and solve it. Then go to 1,000 units, understand where's the second problem, solve it, and go forward. This is probably the best way to save time and even money, instead of checking and spending, let's say, a half year to check everything which you are sourcing.
Okay.
I think to your point, Ashot, what you're saying in a way is that there is, I mean, a lot of time. Yes, there is IQC. Yes, there is IPQC, FQC. You have all the type of QC, but do you know what you're checking? So if you don't define yourself the standard for your own product, because it's a new product, right? So if you don't, I think the first step would be to define yourself the standard for your own product, to define AQL,
exactly, yeah.
and then to be able to tell the guys, is it pass or no pass? Because if you don't define it, then yeah. So there is before even doing IQC would be to define, what is acceptable for you, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand that in reality, you can get any quality in China. I mean, even if you want a luxury, super quality, it's possible to get in China super quality. But super quality costs super money. So first, you need to understand what is the real level of quality which you need. So you can ask for something very not important actually, and the supplier will give you a big price, and you just will go to another supplier. So first, Mihran is absolutely right. You need to exactly correct define what is the requirements, quality requirements. Provide this to your supplier in written form. Ask them to sign a document so that you be able to check in Chinese suppliers, factories, and also in your team here in Armenia.
Great. Good. So before getting to the questions from our viewers, I also discuss this one last topic, and then we'll get to the questions. So what are the roles of supply chain and cost? Rafayel, maybe you can start answering.
Tigran, actually, I didn't hear the question well.
Sure.
Could you please repeat?
What are the roles of free economic zones to optimize the supply chain?
Free economic zones. Yeah, I think in a country like Armenia, where there are many components, especially being part of the Eurasian Union, there are still components that you will need to pay on the border, not only the VAT, but also some tax, it's called custom fees,
duties,
to be able to import to country. And then if you're exporting at the end, you will still get some part of that money back, but especially the VAT. But being in the free economic zone, you're out of all these headaches, because you are not going to think about anything like easily importing, easily exporting. Of course, you will not be able to get those final assembled products into Armenia easily. But then if we're manufacturing for the world market and our major target is not Armenia, so free economic zones, I think they are probably the very best, the very good thing. It still challenges with bureaucracy to register a company there, with the locations of those free economic zones. At least in Armenia, there are like 3-4 free economic zones. Not all are dedicated or are made for electronics or consumer manufacturing. So some of those are for other industries. And then those which are for this industry, the locations are not the best. So, and there are some facility issues and so on. But from the perspective of supply chain, I think free economic zones are a good initiative from the government perspective for us to accelerate the local manufacturing. But still going back, even that is not saving us from, I think still contract manufacturing in somewhere else is better. because Armenian mind and Armenian brain, we're enough smart to work on the design rather than on the assembly. That's what I think. At least before we have got a very smart manufacturing, where you just buy all the equipment, everything is automated, you have got maybe 5 people to manage the whole factory, which will manufacture millions of components, which is not far. Maybe in next 5-6 years, we're going to see such kind of factories coming in. And I will be happy to have such in Armenia one. Okay.
But then Rajan, we need to fix the logistics.
So then the free economic zone will be good. But still, being landlocked and importing and exporting with airplanes, it's going to be very much expensive. But then we need to solve some other issues, basically making Armenia a bigger country and like getting access to sea and so on.
Okay, it's not divert from the topic. So, anyone wants to, any has experience with the free economic zones and most of it?
I mean, I think it's just a matter of the free economic zone idea is like, yeah, I'm not going to pay taxes, it's great, etc. But it's really like a play in your balance, in your income statement and balance sheets of plus and minus. It's just a lot of headache. When we start to sell to China, the products are coming. We're selling it as an imported product, right? So the product got to leave the manufacturer, and they technically got to go out of the country, and we have to re-import them. So we are selling imported U.S. products into China. But what happened is that really what the truck is doing is going in a free zone, is making a U-turn and coming back. So it's really now if you have import duties on it, then it's a problem. But it's really for the VAT, for avoiding all these VAT situation. And there is VAT in Armenia, there is VAT in China. So that's probably where it will be helpful.
Okay, great. So let's see if we have any questions from the viewers.
I have no idea how to answer that Altium designer. So if anyone want to jump in this, help Artem.
I think I will try to answer, although it's not related to the subject of today's discussion, as it's not much related to the supply chain. But I think, like, at least we have used Altium Designer some time ago, and the best documentation was firstly the internal help. They have got quite a good documentation inside this software. And I think that there is quite a good community, and you can just download and search and download many different even video tutorials for Altium Designer. And I have seen couple even in Russian language. If you're fine watching some Russian tutorials, they're also in Russian language. That I can later on find out a couple links and share that with this person, with Artem Vardanyan.
Okay, folks. I actually don't find more relevant questions really to the topic, unfortunately. But I think maybe there are things that you wanted to share regarding the hardware supply chain, and there was no question about it. So let's spend maybe 5 minutes on that, and we can wrap it up.
Yeah, Tigran, I would like to share some experience how to talk with the supplier. It's very, very, I think, very super important to explain what you need. So my biggest problem came when I didn't explain good enough what I need and what quality I need to have. So there is a need to spend time and write probably a few pages of very clear document which explain what you need. In case if you do your own production, I think some components made by you, designed by you. In case if you're sourcing just standard components, it's another story. And it's important to understand that the engineers in Chinese factories, they don't speak English at all. So any document which you prepare, any technical document which you prepare, It will be sent first to a sales manager. The sales manager will translate it to Chinese and give it then pass it to the engineer. And in that process, sometimes you can miss some very important information. And then I understand that probably it's important that I have some engineers who speak Chinese, who can translate my technical document, technical document to the Chinese, then send it directly to the engineers. This process may solve some issues. Another thing is to understand that the point which is probably even trivial for us, clear for us, it doesn't make it maybe not so clear for Chinese people, for suppliers. Let's say if you ask to paint the plastic, probably you will understand to paint from all sides, but you need to clear mention that every side of plastic should be painted, because supplier will always look a way to make a production as cheap as he can to be able to provide you a cheap price. So if it didn't mention something, he will find a way to do it in something else and provide you another product. So that's why it is very, very important to make the document very clear and probably even in Chinese language. This is my suggestion.
Okay, some good points from experience. Okay,
To that point, we are making very detailed, like A4 size description of every single component, even like simple ones, like even a small screw, like what color it should be, what size, like all the parameters. Sometimes it looks like a stupid thing to do, but Chinese are very good at finding a way to give you something that's cheaper and similar, but not exactly what you want. So like detailed documentation for every single component you have is usually very helpful in talking to the manufacturers and suppliers.
Something to add to what Ashot told, like another way of solving these kind of issues is just to learn Chinese, as what Mihran did, which is another like thing. If we want to win in this kind of world of mass production in China, at least we need to have somebody who knows Chinese in our team, or to collaborate with somebody who is very much our person. And probably that should not be a Chinese person, or it can be a Chinese person, but still somebody that you really trust and you have worked for quite some time with that person.
Yeah, I think with this, in these times, in this world, probably it's one of the languages you probably should learn. I think Papazian wants to
speak.
Sorry, Tigran. I was just going to ask a general question. Have you guys noticed any change since the beginning of the year with the COVID, as far as sourcing suppliers and how they are, don't you guys notice, like, do you guys notice that they're acting like they're more scared and more, on they're more, you have to tiptoe a little more. There is a lot of fear and scare because of all the scams that happen. And I've been doing since the past 9 months, not 6 months, been trading a lot of PPE, medical products and masks and gloves and stuff, or at least trying, because it's a very, very hard market. And the entire import-export procurement industry, really, I feel that there is really a shift that happened in terms of when you approach somebody, the lack of trust. And
Mihran, you are muted.
Yeah, for some reason got muted.
When did I start to get? Okay, sorry. So I was saying, since COVID, I really feel that there is like the fear from the suppliers are just doubled up, and there is really the need to really sell yourself and show a lot of trust and show a lot of, like company profile and a lot of nicely done PPTs and presentation and stuff. At least that's from for trade.
To respond to your what you're saying, I have actually noticed something opposite, but I haven't worked with any new contract manufacturer or supplier, but I continue working with the old ones. So now I have noticed during this time of COVID-19, they are more worried to lose me as a customer. So they increase they improve their quality. They are now worried and have a fear that like RAFA Solutions may now start working with somebody else because of, especially, it's not much related exactly to COVID-19, rather the problems or the implications related to the US and China. And that as we are selling in the US and I need to export from China to the US, and like all these things are making bigger challenges for that. And now I have felt more positive attitude rather than some kind of fear towards me. At least being an old customer for that.
Yeah.
I'm sharing thoughts with Rafayel. I noticed the same as Rafayel mentioned, and the vice versa.
Okay, folks. If I think we are 1.5 hours, so let's wrap it up. I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers, especially Anna. She was communicating and helping to set it up, and all the participants, Sargis, Rafayel, Ashot, and both Mihrans. It was great that you found time and joined us. So good luck with your startups, businesses, enterprises, whatever you are doing. I hope we don't have any problems with the supply chain. And to our viewers, so we encourage to start hardware companies, join hardware companies. I know that people usually think they don't differentiate much IT and high tech, but there is other things in high tech behind besides IT. So I encourage you to look into that. That's very important. That's very interesting. That's very important. So come join this exciting community. Build interesting people.
Thank you as well for moderating this interesting discussion. Thank you, Tigran, as well for moderating, and thank you, Zero House and everyone for organizing.
All right, thank you.